Donald Trump. And remember, I don't understand the real question we should be asking. Why does the UK love Iranians being killed by this evil regime? Why aren't you stepping up and helping the beautiful people of Iran who wants to be free? Why are you so in hatred of Donald Trump so much that you would allow Iranians to die at the hands of an evil Islamic regime and not step up to the plate?
We have a massive one on our hands today. This isn't just a catastrophic media appearance. It is a direct window into the arrogance, factual bankruptcy, and aggressive anti-democratic bullying that characterizes the MAGA movement's approach to international relations. We are looking at Trump's spiritual advisor, Pastor Mark Burns, going on to LBC to defend Trump's unprovoked military aggression against Iran, an escalation that directly threatened global stability, shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and saw Trump openly threatening the complete annihilation of an entire civilization on Truth Social. When an experienced British broadcaster tried to pin him down on facts, international law, and sovereignty, Burns completely melted down. He resorted to insulting King Charles, telling the LBC host he was a little slow, and demanding absolute subservient obedience from the UK, like we are an imperial colony rather than a sovereign nation. It ended exactly how it should have, the host cutting his line because of his utterly unchristian, abusive attitude. What is really at stake here is the foundational principle of democratic sovereignty. These far-right populists demand absolute compliance from America's democratic allies while treating international law and public accountability like minor inconveniences. They want our working-class soldiers to clean up the bloody, chaotic messes manufactured by billionaire-backed authoritarian regimes. And when a democracy says no, they throw a temper tantrum on live air. If you are new here, take a second to subscribe. It really helps the channel. I'll give you my thoughts at the end after the clip.
Direction, and I think many in America believe that. But the reality of it is, UK has always been our greatest and oldest ally. And it is important that we share so many of the same messaging. Naturally, your prime minister and even your king have done some things that has been very challenging to us Americans in regards to the direction that you're taking your country. But the reality of it is, this was a good day to continue to build upon our previous strong relationships. And yes, some of the things the king said, I believe, were unnecessary. And that he really needs to, again, stick to kissing babies and also being the head of the Christian church. I remind him.
I'm sorry. Don't be so insulting to the king. He made a very, very thoughtful speech there with some important messages, particularly around our collective security. And you resort to an insult about he should stick to kissing babies. Grow up.
I think you confused my statement, and I'm sorry you may be a little slow in what I'm saying. I'll speak slower so you can understand, because what I said was not an insult at all. I think, again, I made it very clear that this was a great day for Great Britain and for the United States. I think this was a beautiful thing. It's an honor that His Majesty took time out of his schedule to come to the United States of America. It's a beautiful thing, and I think that this is the kind of the unity that we need to continue to build on. There are some policies that you are having in your country that is challenging to us conservatives here in America, but that's neither here nor there. Again, so I'm sorry you must have misunderstood what I said as an insult. It wasn't an insult. He is still the head of the Christian church in the UK. He is the head of the Church of England. And to many Christians in the UK are challenged or disturbed that his actions have seemed to be belittled the Christian faith while promoting other faiths, while he is still yet the head of the Christian church. But it's an honor that he came to the United States.
Sorry, he spent a substantial section of his speech reaffirming his Christian faith and explaining why it's important not just to him, but to our country, to your country. I'm not quite following you about how he's sort of tried to undermine it.
Well, again, I'm not speaking specific to the speech. I think the outcry of American Christians and the outcry of the UK Christians previously has caused His Majesty to echo his strong sentiments of the Christian faith. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what we wanted to see. That's what we want to hear. Again, that is more so for the Christians in the United Kingdom. Who felt very strongly that their king, the head of the Church of England, has diverted from, promoting the Christian faith in the UK. But again, I think it was a beautiful thing. I think to see all of the great supporters who were there to support His Majesty, the King, what an honor. I do hope to get to meet him myself, especially when I come back to London. And so to be able to continue to preach prosperity and unity amongst our two countries. But again, there are some challenges that's still there, especially with your prime minister, but hopefully we can get them worked out.
Well, I'm no fan of our Prime Minister, but the insults that Donald Trump has doled out to him ever since the attacks on Iran have been utterly despicable, not the sort of thing that you would expect from the head of one state to the Prime Minister of another. And then 3 days before this visit takes place, we have administration officials, apparently with the endorsement of the White House, saying that President Trump is calling into question UK sovereignty over the Falkland Islands. And you think, well, on what planet is that an appropriate thing to do 3 days before the King of the Falkland Islands visits this country?
Well, I think the real question should be asked is, what planet do you live on to where the United States' greatest ally, the UK, refused to support the United States of America's positioning to open up the Strait of Hormuz and to support UK? It is you who need the oil, not the United States of America. It is you who need to make sure that that strait is open. But yet we are risking our soldiers. We are helping the millions upon millions of Iranians who are thanking President Trump for coming to their rescue and removing that evil regime. Even right now, and I spoke to the president a couple of days ago about Iran, and even now, the very fact that their leadership is all in chaos just shows once again why it was good that Donald Trump, President Trump, acted upon that. So it's challenging when the UK refused to send naval support. It's challenging, and again, what planet you living on when our greatest ally refused to help us when we needed them? But yet, trust me, when it comes time for the UK to need us, the United States of America will be there.
The fact is that Britain has come to America's aid on many occasions in the past. President Trump didn't even seem to know that we did after 9/11 on Afghanistan. It is for sovereign nations, whether it's Britain, Germany, France, any nation, to decide whether they are going to take part in military action. Now, I happen to disagree with our government stance on this, but I fully respect our elected government's right to make that decision. And
Sure.
I mean, as you well know, there have been occasions when America has done things which haven't been to the advantage of our country. But these alliances, they are formed over decades, not temporary sort of years, and they have to endure if our collective security is to endure. But that doesn't mean to say that when Donald Trump says jump, we just say how high. International relations don't work like that.
Well, you're speaking about the Trump derangement syndrome that you clearly have, and many of those in the UK have. We're not talking about Donald Trump. We're talking about the government of the United States of America. President Trump is the elected commander-in-chief. But the government of the United States of America.
Absolutely, I fully recognize that.
So you're talking about Donald Trump, and you're talking about his personality. You never met the man, but you're talking about his personality.
I haven't mentioned his personality.
Then he says how high. That's a Trump deranged syndrome mentality. We're talking about the security of our two great nations, and the reality of it is, you are part of NATO, and so when the United States, who is a member of NATO, needs or requesting help, you should in return.
An organization which President Trump consistently undermines.
At the hands of the evil regime. And thanks to President Trump, they are now in a leadership situation to where things are falling apart internally in their own nation. And that gives an opportunity for democracy and the beautiful people
the same
of Iran
regime.
to rise to the situation.
It's
No,
the
it's not
same
the same
regime. The
Because
regime, the
If it was
personalities.
the same regime, their Navy would still be existing. Their Navy doesn't exist. If it was the same regime, their Air Force would exist. Their Air Force does not exist. If it's the same regime, the same Iranians are now saying we want the Strait of Hormuz to be opened up, but we have an internal leadership issue.
Well,
that was not the same under the former Ayatollah. No, he's been
let's face
eliminated.
it.
And all of the generals have been eliminated thanks to President Donald Trump. And remember, I don't understand the real question we should be asking. Why does the UK love Iranians being killed by this evil regime? Why aren't you stepping up and helping the beautiful people of Iran who wants to be free? Why are you so in hatred of Donald Trump so much that you would allow Iranians to die at the hands of an evil
I'll tell you
Islamic
what.
and not step up to plate in the
For
system?
somebody who says he's a pastor, you don't have a very Christian attitude to people
Well,
in
you
debate,
clearly
do
don't
you?
read
I
your
think we'll
Bible
end it
and
there.
realize
Thank
that
you very
Jesus
much
looked
indeed. No, enough. We've heard enough derangement, to use the word that he used there. I mean, Simon, look, you can't reason with people like this, can you?
They're not set to receive. They're not set to engage in a serious-minded conversation.
Let's break down exactly what we just witnessed, because this wasn't just a train wreck interview, it was an absolute masterclass in the toxic, dishonest rhetoric that defines the far-right populist playbook. Pastor Mark Burns went on national British radio expecting to deliver standard MAGA talking points unchallenged, and the second he faced actual journalistic scrutiny, he collapsed into insults and total factual delusion. First, let's look at his staggering rewrite of international law. Burns actually tried to argue that because the UK is a member of NATO, we had a legal and moral obligation to send our naval forces into a shooting war with Iran. Let's inject some reality into this right-wing fantasy. NATO is a collective defense alliance. Article 5 is explicit. It is triggered when a member state is attacked. It is not a blank check for an aggressive, unprovoked, unilateral strike launched by an American president without consulting a single ally. If NATO operated the way Mark Burns thinks it does, it wouldn't be a defensive alliance. It would be a dangerous, volatile, global mercenary force controlled by whoever happens to occupy the White House. But it gets worse. Look at the sheer, unadulterated hypocrisy of his economic argument. Burns had the audacity to lecture a British audience about how we need the oil from the Strait of Hormuz, claiming Trump was doing us a favor. Hold on a minute, the Strait of Hormuz was perfectly open, global trade was flowing, and the UK wasn't facing an energy emergency until Donald Trump decided to bomb Iran. The MAGA administration created the crisis, shut down the trade route, and then turned around to demand that British soldiers risk their lives to clean up a billionaire-backed geopolitical mess that we were never even consulted on. That isn't an alliance. That's a demand for total unconditional vassalage. And how does a MAGA populist react when a sovereign democracy exercises its own judgment? They insult our public institutions. Mark Burns openly demeaned the head of state, telling King Charles to stick to kissing babies. When the LBC host pointed out that the King's speech explicitly focused on collective security and faith, Burns didn't back down. He told the broadcaster he must be a little slow and needed him to speak slower. This is the ultimate face of far-right populism, arrogant, deeply provincial, completely intellectually hollow, and utterly incapable of handling a peer-to-peer debate. When he completely ran out of fake facts, he deployed the ultimate right-wing escape hatch, accusing the host of Trump derangement syndrome. Let's be very clear, asserting that a sovereign parliamentary democracy has the right to decide when and where its own working-class men and women are sent to. Fight and die is not derangement. It is the very definition of national sovereignty. The standard Burns demands of the UK automatic, unblinking military compliance is a standard that America has never, and would never, accept from any nation on earth. Finally, let's talk about the absolute moral bankruptcy of his pastor label. Mark Burns sat there claiming that Trump is saving the beautiful people of Iran, completely ignoring that his boss spent the week on Truth Social threatening to wipe an entire ancient civilization off the map. There is absolutely nothing Christian about fabricating lies, demanding war, insulting your hosts, and cheering on the potential annihilation of millions of innocent civilians. The host was 100% right to cut the line. You cannot reason with these people. They aren't on air to engage in democracy. They are only there to transmit propaganda. If you made it to the end, hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll catch you in the next one.